Is there a future where you would envision AI replacing interactions that include things like emotion and empathy?
I do. I think there is a point in the future where you can at least emulate these things in a machine. Now, there's a whole question philosophically about why would that be any different than what happens in us? We're just a big squishy machine. But at least in the near future, I think these are emulatable things, being able to emulate empathy and emotion and whatnot through machine systems. Long term, is it going to completely replace the emotional pieces of life? No, I don't think so. And that's why I always tell companies, I even mentioned this last year when we were at the empowerment experience in Austin. The things that become most important in the AI age are the human things: emotion, creativity, connection with other people. Those skills, the things that we always called soft skills before, which really weren't because they were probably the most complicated things we do as members of an organization or business leaders or employees in a business, those things become now even more important than they ever were before.
This is the Entrepreneurs United podcast with your hosts, John St. Pierre and Rich Hoffman.
Hey, entrepreneurs, we're excited to talk to Dr. Luke Wilson today. We had Dr. Luke at the Entrepreneurs United Empowerment Experience last year in Austin, and we got raving feedback about him and his perspective in business with AI and how it's changing the world today. Can you open up with us, Dr. Luke? And so happy to have you here. Talk to us for a moment about how is AI changing things for entrepreneurs?
First off, John, Rich, good to talk to you again. Glad to be here. Artificial intelligence is really changing the way that companies can do business, especially for small businesses. The technology changes we've seen over the last 18 to 24 months, especially with this new round of AI techniques that are called generative AI, where you can actually have computer systems creating new materials and content, whether it's text or images or video or audio for you, have really changed the way that small businesses can be productive in a modern environment. There's been conversations about AIs acting as the CEOs of companies, AI agents being able to take over many of the mundane roles. There are conversations in the media now about the first single person multi-billion dollar companies possibly going to show up in the next 5 to 10 years because everything that's running underneath the executive role is going to be done by AI. It really allows a small business to act like a large business that has an enormous staff without having to hire all those people. So I think it's really a transformative time for small businesses, startups, the swath of SMBs out there to be able to use technology to make up the gap between the amount of productivity you can experience as a large corporation and the amount of productivity you can do as a startup or a small business.
Yeah, look, I love that direction, right? A lot of small business entrepreneurs are not necessarily limited by sales and marketing. They're limited by their ability to produce and their operational capacity. And
Mhm.
what we've seen so far with AI is I can create better images or graphics, or I can do a lot of marketing things with AI. Okay, that's going to help me in my marketing or maybe less expense in the marketing. But talk to me about maybe some real practical examples of how I can increase my operational capacity. You just said something right off the bat, right? Small businesses and productivity and how AI can really help you with generative AI. So just give me an example of a small business and how they could use generative AI to be more productive from an operational standpoint, to reduce their operational costs and put more through the funnel.
Yes, it's really a matter of cycles in a day. So, a small business, you have a handful of people working to fill your sales pipeline and bring in new customers or generate those leads, whether they're cold leads or warm leads, through your social media channels, through your direct mails, or whatever it is you're doing. And it comes down literally to time in a day. There's only so many blog posts you can write. There's only so many marketing emails you can write. There are only so many phone calls you can make. It's one thing if you have an army of people that are doing this. If you're a larger corporation, you have dozens or even hundreds of people that help to make sure that your sales pipeline is full and that you're productive and you're getting this work done. But for the small business owner, where you have maybe 5 people, it can take so much time to put this fresh content out there. You may have a great product, you may have a great idea, you may offer amazing services depending on the type of company you are, but you just can't get it all done in time to keep the pipeline full. Now you can replace a lot of tasks, writing blog posts or generating bids or creating website content or whatever it happens to be. You can have that done automatically for you, and then you just go back and do a little bit of tweaking. So instead of being limited to maybe 2 to 5,000 words a day that you could publish beforehand, you can be doing this dozens of times over. You can generate 1,000 words with a generative AI tool in seconds. And so, oh, great. Now I've got a blog post that describes my idea. I need to add a picture to that. I can go use generative AI to generate the picture for it. I can put it all together. I can have it generate the social media post that I'm going to use. Now I can start filling that pipeline. I can get eyes on my idea. I can get eyes on my product more frequently and more quickly than I ever really could before.
Where can the average bear get connected with generative AI? What are the platforms and what are the costs involved?
It's everywhere now. It's amazing how quickly this starts. For those that don't know, the first kind of generative AI tool that hit the mass market was about 2 years ago. It was OpenAI's ChatGPT tool. You can actually go to openai.com and there's a free version you can use. Just be careful that you're not putting sensitive company information into it, because free tools, the saying always goes, if the product is free, the user are the value. And any data you put into a free service is going to be used and retrained and possibly spilled out to other people. But there's free tools you can experiment with. OpenAI is probably the first and most famous. Google now has its own tools. So Google has a generative AI foundational model called Gemini that you can access not only from the landing page, gemini.google.com, but you can also access it inside of Google Workspace, for example. So if you use a business, use Google Docs and Sheets and Slides and all that kind of stuff, you can actually leverage Gemini from inside of that. The other really big one is Copilot, which is Microsoft product. So that's a mixture of OpenAI and Microsoft working together. So you can actually leverage OpenAI's tools from inside your Microsoft Office 365 subscription if you want. And you can do the same things you can do in Google Workspace, creating slides, creating spreadsheets, creating documents, all automated using the generative pre-trained transformer GPT tool from OpenAI, all within your Microsoft account. So there's lots of different ways to go about this. We see lots of other tools adding their own AI agents. Salesforce is adding them. If you're already using something, if you happen to be big enough that Salesforce makes sense, you can start using the AI tools within Salesforce. The communication tools like Slack are adding their own AI tools inside, and the list goes on and on. We've now seen this multi-billion-dollar cottage industry of hundreds of different companies basically form overnight thanks to this generative AI revolution.
So I'm not looking for you to recite the pricing sheet of all of these different companies, but what's the cost structure? How does it typically go? What can an entrepreneur expect to have to invest, and how is it charged?
Like everything else in the modern kind of subscription as a service era, it's done on a seat-based license model for most of these. So you can expect to pay 15 or 20 to 40 or $50 per person per month for these types of services. So it's all within the range of kind of the standard software as a service subscription model that we're very used to nowadays. And the great thing about that is you don't necessarily have to give everyone in your organization the ability to use all these tools. You can limit it to a handful of people at first as a trial run. And then maybe if you have one or two content creation people that need to use it, you spread it out to them, and then you just grow. As your business grows, you can grow that subscription model as you need to.
So I would suggest the company that I work with, we have a fairly standard company as it relates to the different departments involved. We have a marketing team, we have an operations team, we have finance, we have legal, we have recruiting. There are executives, there are what you might call middle management and so forth. Where would be the entry point for either the company that I'm working with or the average company? What is the department that, hey, somebody moves on, they move to another job. Why don't we not replace their role and try AI? What department would you recommend that begin with?
So it really depends on what the product is that the company is selling and what the target audience is. Typically, I recommend starting with the content creators. If you've got a marketing department, that's a great place to start, because Most of the value you can see right now with generative AI is in generating content to be consumed by people. And so having the ability to, maybe you've lost someone in your marketing team, for example, it's like, all right, I can give the rest of my marketing team subscription access to some generative AI tool or whatever. And now they can each be 50% more productive, 100% more productive, 150% more productive than they were before because they can use these tools to help them generate that content. They don't have to completely rewrite all this boilerplate material that goes into all of your typical marketing materials. You can just tell the generative AI tool, hey, I want you to create something and be sure you include this boilerplate in there as well. And it can do that for you. And so that's the first place I think most companies can start is with their content creator divisions. After that, you want to look into your kind of management level folks, people that are writing kind of repetitive documents, guidelines for employees or agenda information for meetings or things like that. Things that can be repeated over and over again. Generative AI tools can definitely help speed the process along there. After that, it's really business specific. And that's why there's a whole industry of consulting companies and strategic partners that can work with organizations to make sure that they're starting with the right people, starting with the right number of people who have access to these tools, and then growing their AI capabilities as the business grows and the needs grow.
So, continuing to go down this line of questions with the content creators that you highlighted first, earlier you had mentioned something about direct mail, you had mentioned something about blog posts. So, obviously, those are some entry level areas into
Mhm.
content creation. Are there others? What are the other places around content creation that you go, wow, if you get into AI, you're going to be able to push content out like you won't believe in these areas of your business, and it's going to make a difference? Where are those areas?
I mentioned kind of blog posts and direct mail, like you mentioned before. One of the real big spaces for being able to see the value of these types of tools in your business is in manuals, documentation. So if you're a software company, for example, maybe you're a small software startup and you're building software tools for other companies, you can actually have documentation auto written by these generative AI tools. They will just go inspect your code and generate all the documentation needed for selling your API as a service or whatever it happens to be so that your customers can figure out how to use it. Using it for onboarding materials. So if you're in HR, for example, generating onboarding materials for new employees, a great way to start this because you have some of that information already and some of it needs to be created on the fly sometimes. Or you're changing the way you do your onboarding practices, for example. And social media posts are another huge thing. They're not long, but they're time consuming. It takes a long time to craft a message that you want to put in social media if you're using social media as an advertising platform for your business. And so you can have generative AI generate a dozen social media posts on one topic. That way you can consistently post because it's all about volume of posts, right? Even if you want to talk about the same topic over and over again, it's about the volume and the variety. And so you can have it generate a dozen different posts, post a different one each day, maybe about the same topic, maybe about the same product, but it gives variety, it gives frequency, and you didn't have to go off and craft it yourself every single time.
My hypothesis is the average business has heard of AI at this point, and the average business is not involved in it. What do you find to be the common concerns that would hold somebody back from getting involved in it? And are those things that are worth objection handling now for our listeners to say, hey, here's a myth. Most people think this, and it's actually that. Like, why are businesses not getting involved in it, and what's the reality?
I think the most common misconception, especially right now, because we see all of these different stories about AI tools and AI capabilities in the news and how eventually it's going to replace all these people and it's going to put so much of the population out of work. I think the major concern, if not at the executive level, at the employee level, is the concern about replacement. And I think we need to understand this for the company leadership out there. I think if you're creating an AI strategy and you're looking to deploy AI in your business, yes, you're obviously looking at it as a way to improve your productivity. Yes, obviously, long term, you're probably looking at it as a way to replace employees, maybe post attrition or something like that as employees leave the company, maybe not replacing them. But for the people working day to day for your company, it needs to not be thought of as a challenge to them, but as a tool for them to augment what they can do. If you can get the same amount of work done with less effort, that's great. And better for the employer, if you can get more work done for the same amount of effort, that's even better because now you can say you're contributing more heavily towards the success of the business. You're helping to drive revenues by increasing frequency of product notification or eyes in front of products and things like that, getting that pipeline filled. And that's really what it's about. It's about maximizing the productivity of the worker that's already there, not replacing the worker, not supplanting the worker, but really making sure that the employees are as productive as possible without working people to total exhaustion. Because it's great to work 60 hours, it's great to work 80 hours. That used to be the metric everyone lived by is, are you a hard worker? Are you working more than 40 hours a week? Now you get the same amount of work done and you don't have to work as hard at it. But that makes employees more creative, it makes them more resilient, it makes them not miss as much work due to sick time and things like that. So there's a lot of other benefits that come from it. It's not just about replacing employees.
Listen, I have a bunch of different thoughts. I'm an entrepreneur listening to this episode. Show me the ROI, show me the money. And yes, I care about my employees. Yes, I want my employees to have a good life and be well. But I also want a return on investment on my
Mhm.
employees. I want a return on investment on these investments I would make in AI. And I can tell you guys, and I'm sure Luke, you fall in the same category. And maybe I'm just talking to Rich then. The amount of efficiency that I get through using AI tools in a non-marketing fashion are pretty legitimate. When I need to put any document together, if I need
Mhm.
to read a big document, if I want to do anything, like we were working with a couple companies now that don't have SOPs. Think about the companies, small businesses that don't have standard operating procedures, and they just installed this new CRM platform. That's one of the biggest efficiency tools I'm seeing right now. For example, Scribe is one that we're using, right? So it's called Scribe. You literally, Rich, click around your screen and show them how you would do the steps, and a whole SOP gets spit out with both the written documentation and the video, and it shows you exactly what to do. There's so many companies that when they bring on new people, don't even know how to train them because their stuff is outdated from the manuals they created 15 years ago, and their
Mhm.
business is advanced, right? But one of the things, Luke, I worked in logistics, and in logistics, third party logistics, literally, they count every box that moves out the door. That it
Mhm.
was 10 cents for the forklift person, it was 5 cents for the janitor, it was 10 cents for the person who went to pick the product off, it was whatever. They count, like, in the product being shipped, the
Mhm.
exact pennies of what it costs to do something. As small business operators, we do not do that. And if you use AI tools, isn't there ways to really look at each function in the business and say, you know what, in your function, you're spending an hour to do this every day. How do we create systems and tools to remove that cost so you as an employee don't get fired? Remove that cost so you as an employee can do more things that's more productive for the business.
Yep.
Isn't that the way we should be looking at it?
It's absolutely the way we should be looking at it. The tools are there to speed up what we were already doing first and foremost. I'm a small business owner myself. I have a small consulting company in Austin, Texas, and we use generative AI to help generate our statements of work, to generate our contracts for clients, to generate our blog posts, to generate our social media posts. All of that is time that I would have spent doing it myself. Now, I have a contracted rate. If I have a customer and I'm working with them, I have a contracted rate. And if I'm working on all this other stuff, that's time I'm not spending out there on contract, bringing in revenue. Um, so if it took me an hour before and it takes me 5 minutes now, that means over the course of a week, I've saved half a day's worth of work or more by automating all of this away. Depending on the type of work you're in, if like me, where the company is about the people and the people's time, that's hundreds of dollars or even thousands of dollars a week that just suddenly appeared as available for clients. And with these types of tools, regardless of the business you're in, that's what it's about. It's about giving the time back so they can be devoted to doing more things that help increase revenue.
Yeah, no doubt. But here's the problem. I think the point that Rich, you were leading towards. I'm a small business. I have 4 or 5 people.
Mhm.
I've heard of AI. I would think more than half have heard of AI at this point. I think it's just all over the place, but they don't know where to start. And you gave some ideas of where to start. but they
Mhm.
don't have time to research it. They don't have time to go around and play with tools and figure out which tools work. And you mentioned it yourself. There's like hundreds, thousands of these companies have popped up everywhere. How do you even keep up with this thing? And the way that I like to look at it, and I'd love to ask you this question, Luke, is if I hired you and said, look, I don't have time to do this. I need to hire an AI consulting firm like yours.
Mhm.
I'm just curious. I'm going to put you on the spot. Regardless of what they were to pay you, they probably pay you relative to the size of their business and how much they have to do and how much work the body of work would be. But how sure are you that if I hired you for my 10-person company or my 100-person company, that you'd be able to get me an ROI on time save on bringing tools to the table that would help us shave off time and be more productive? What do you think?
Very confident. And two reasons why. One, you already know how much you're spending for the time you're doing task A, B, or C. You already know that. And if you don't, that's probably another conversation you need to have with your strategic advisors to figure out exactly how much you're spending and why and what your return is on it. But if you know that already, then you bring in an AI consultancy or something like that, or a strategic advisor to come in and look at your business and figure out where the low hanging fruit is and start there. We see return on investment reduction in time spent of 90 to 95% in a lot of cases, especially for the highly repetitive tasks. And every hour spent by every employee has a known cost associated with it. So now you can say, all right, if I had 2 employees that were working 5 hours a week or 10 hours a week doing task A, and I can automate away 95% of that time, I can instantly give you a return on investment on it. Now it's different for every business, but that's why we go in. That's why companies like Vizias, which is my consulting company, go in, work with clients, figure out what the low hanging fruit is in terms of automatable tasks that can be augmented or fully replaced by AI. And then tell our clients, look, if we go ahead and implement this proof of concept project or we implement this small AI effort, this is the amount of money we can save you, and this is how much it's going to cost to do it.
It's making me think it was years ago, well before anybody was talking about AI, that I saw a 60-minute segment on Amazon and
Mhm.
how smart their warehouses were to have these robots go pick stuff off the shelves and bring it over here, all AI generated. And there's a book actually out there that's called What Would Google Do? And in this conversation, I think there should be a book on what would an Amazon facility warehouse do? They would know exactly how much time is spent on every task and how they can
Mhm.
shave every single second and minute off a task in their operation. But Rich, we talk so much. I think 8 out of 10 conversations, maybe that's aggressive, 6 or 7 out of 10 conversations we have on the Entrepreneurs United podcast is centered around people and hiring and how hard it is to hire people and how hard it is to build a culture. But yet, entrepreneurs do not spend enough time looking how to maximize the production of their teams. And as Luke said earlier, get them happier in their jobs because they're not so stressed out. They can actually do things better in what they do. Do you agree with that? Almost 6 to 7 out of 10 conversations about people and hiring.
Easily. And I think when we talk about people and we talk about leadership and we talk about vulnerability and vulnerability based trust, vulnerability probably comes up in 3 out of 10, 2 out of 10. Where's the place for those things in our future, Dr. Luke? Where's the place for the human? The fact that it's okay to make mistakes and we should own those and we should put those in front. And that actually creates trust and that creates loyalties and that ultimately creates efficiencies. And where's the place for all that? Or is that going to be like cooking over a campfire compared to cooking today?
Those things are actually going to become more important than they are now as we go forward, especially in the employer employee relationship. If you're a leader and you have staff, right now, most of the value you get from your staff is in the physical things they do. It's in the tasks they perform, it's in the KPIs they meet. But as we go forward and we can automate more and more things, and as AI becomes more general purpose, as the breadth of tasks we can perform in an automated way increases, first off, no one should ever expect that AI is infallible. Everything it generates is, for lack of a simpler explanation, is a mathematical statistical distribution. It's a guess. And it all has to be checked. It all has to be verified. It all has to have an owner. There has to be a stakeholder and owner inside your business that's responsible for making sure that's correct. Whereas the current employee relationship is focused very heavily on the task right now. That relationship has to change. Now the task is being done in an automated way. What is the relationship between leadership and employee? It's about trust. It's about knowing that employee is going to verify, confirm, make sure there are no mistakes, own up to those mistakes, and really have a more personal, intimate relationship amongst the employees of a company and the leadership of the company, because that's what's left at the end of the day is the set of human components, the set of trust, emotional, human pieces that can't be automated away. There has to be an understanding from leadership that the people are still important because that trust is still important, because that need for verification is there, because that need for ownership is still there. It may mean there are fewer employees in the business overall, but the trust between the members of an organization, the trust between leadership and employee has to get stronger.
Within your answer, I heard you say the stakeholder needs to ensure it's correct. There's a need for verification. Is that to say, where are you? Is it 100% of the time AI is used as a first draft? Is that 100% of the time that is your recommendation as of today, that a human is required? It's just to help you create a first draft and get you going faster.
That's right. At this point, I would not recommend to any business, to any leadership team, that you trust the content that's created without verification. The content that's created is a good first guess. It's a good draft. They can get a little technical, but there are techniques that can be used in order to ensure that the content is more accurate or that it is properly referencing from your own internal documentation and things like that. So there are techniques that can be used to increase the veracity of the content that's created. But at the end of the day, it needs a set of human eyes. It needs an owner to say, I vouch for the content that was first, second, third, fourth, fifth draft created by an AI tool, but has been verified by me. And so more important now than ever, because now it's not the human that's generating all the content, it's a machine generating the content, and the human is now even more responsible. It's like every employee and employee. Everyone becomes a manager at this point. And so now you've got a computational employee that's out there doing the work, and you're responsible for making sure that the work is done correctly, that the work is done on time, that it meets constraints of the organization, it meets all the performance indicators, and then you turn it in. And so that's why I say this trust is so important, because now everyone in your organization basically becomes a manager.
Is there a future where you would envision AI replacing interactions that include things like emotion and empathy?
I do. I think there is a point in the future where you can at least emulate these things in a machine. Now, there's a whole question philosophically about why would that be any different than what happens in us? We're just a big squishy machine. But at least in the near future, I think these are emulatable things, being able to emulate empathy and emotion and whatnot through machine systems. Long term, is it going to completely replace the emotional pieces of life? No, I don't think so. And that's why I always tell companies, I even mentioned this last year when we were at the empowerment experience in Austin. The things that become most important in the AI age are the human things: emotion, creativity, connection with other people. Those skills, the things that we always called soft skills before, which really weren't, because they were probably the most complicated things we do as members of an organization or business leaders or employees in a business. Those things become now even more important than they ever were before. And so focus on those. Every one of us needs to be willing to focus on improving our emotional capacity, improving our empathy, improving our emotional reaction to people, and downplaying or de-emphasizing the repetitive kind of mechanical tasks that are now all going to be replaced by a computer.
I'd love to go around and get a percentage from all three of us on when you go to a website and there's an AI chatbot, what percentage of the time do you find the AI chatbot is sufficient for the reason you went to the website? You don't need to talk to a human. There's no more reason to look anywhere else. It fulfilled the need just in the chatbot. What percentage of time would you say you experience that, John?
In my experience, 5% of the time I get what I actually needed by going there. I usually ending up with a representative when I start yelling at the chatbot.
Do you do that by typing on it, or do you literally?
When you're on a phone with AT&T and they try to press 1 for this, I just go, "Representative!"
Yeah, you're like, agent.
So I put that in all caps.
Yeah, yeah. Dr. Luke, what's your experience?
It depends on the website or the company, but I would say probably 15 to 20% of the time I can get the right answer. And most of the rest of the time I can get the answer through a Google search. And eventually those things will merge together. Eventually a Google search and conversation with an AI chatbot will be one and the same. And in fact, that's the path that even Google is going down right now as they're trying to integrate their chat capabilities with search.
And I think that's part of the problem is that I try and find the answer before I go to the bot. So I'm going to the bot because I can't find the answer. But
Mhm.
then the bot is usually trained on the information from the website, which I already went to try and find to get the answer and things like that. And usually has to do with account information. And the bot is going to give me generic FAQs as opposed to help me do something in the account.
John, I've
Right.
got a hypothesis on this because I
Yeah.
line up with you. My experience is probably 5 or 10%, maybe even less.
Mhm.
I hadn't thought of this when I asked the question, but over the course of the conversation the last minute or two, I bet Dr. Luke is actually hitting 15 or 20. It's not that he's just promoting AI, so he's going to save 15 or I bet he actually is. And I bet it speaks to the necessity of having the correct query. I bet he is so involved in AI that he's asking the correct question
Yep.
better than you and I are, so he's able to get those questions answered. What's your thought on that, Dr. Luke?
It's absolutely the case that asking the right question will give you a better answer. In fact, there's a whole field of work in this space. There's a job title that exists right now that didn't exist 2 years ago and that won't exist in another 2 years called prompt engineer. And so the whole idea of being able to create the question that you give to these chat services, that you give to these AI tools so that you can get the answers you want, it's so difficult right now that some companies and large companies are willing to pay full-time people a full salary, 200K or more a year, to generate the questions to ask these AI systems.
I heard there were, and I'd like you to validate or feel free to contradict me because you're clearly way more knowledgeable than I am. I've heard there are college classes on, and I don't know the name of them, like prompt engineering is a college class that you can take that teach you how to ask the questions that's most
Mhm.
likely to get the result you want. Is that correct? That there are courses on this now?
That's right. There's courses, there's training classes. In fact, Vizias even offers training classes that we host in the Austin community to teach people how to do proper prompt engineering. How do you get the type of response you expect from these systems? Because they don't understand what you're asking at all. There's no understanding of context. There's no understanding of, at an abstracted level, what you're really wanting to know. It's about the string of letters that you put in and what their statistical distribution is and what the statistically most likely response is to that string of letters that you typed in. And it's a facsimile of intelligence. It's a simulation, for example. They're trying to trick you into thinking that you're talking to something intelligent. And so that's why this whole concept of prompt engineering is so important. It's about understanding the string of letters that you need to type in order to get the response you want. And changing just a few of them can drastically change the answer you get.
Speaking of college courses, I may be wrong on this also, but I think we are a long way off before someone getting a medical doctorate is replaced by AI, that a machine is going to go in and do heart surgery. And when a nick happens, it's going to know how to sew up the, like all the contingencies involved. We're a
Mhm.
long way off before that gets replaced. But outside of things like the medical profession, what does this mean for the future of college? Because college is an institution of gaining intelligence. And I think the proposition of AI is you have all that intelligence at your fingertips. You may not need to go get the master's degree. You have somebody with a master's degree sitting right there in your AI. What do you picture this doing to the institution of college?
First off, I used to be a college professor in a previous life, and I think in this context, college over the last 30 to 40 years has really transformed from a place of thinking and learning to a place of skills acquisition. There was this push to have marketable skills upon graduation, and really the focus of starting in the late 80s, early 90s to the modern day. And what I think AI does for colleges and for college students and college professors is it takes away the need for doing kind of the skills based granting. College doesn't need to be about granting skills or conferring skills. It needs to be about teaching people how to learn, how to grow, how to expand. AI doesn't eliminate this at all. AI emphasizes the need for this further because now, in the same way that math degrees didn't go away when we invented the calculator, college degrees don't go away now that we have AI. It's
Great
just that
analogy.
you're focused on the more complex, the more abstract, the more intangible pieces of college, the process of learning how to learn and learning how to abstract and react in various situations, learning how to persevere when things are tough, when everything is going bad and still pushing through and finishing your courses and getting your diploma, even when it would be easier to go get a job somewhere. That's what college focuses on at this point. It's not about the skills, it's about the process of learning and growing.
I want to correct myself, and then I want to go philosophical with you for a question. I said college was about intelligence. It's really not. I think intelligence is with the person. College is about getting the knowledge. So first, I want to correct that. And then secondly, when I was thinking about that, going, is that really intelligence? No, it's knowledge. Where is the place for wisdom in the future? Is there wisdom in AI coming?
I think when it comes to wisdom in artificially intelligent systems, I think, yes, these systems will have the ability to call back into the past and look at data from the past and possibly make extrapolations on past data. Do I think that AI systems, at least in the near term future, are going to be able to take the lessons of history and apply them in a different context to the problems of today? No. I don't think that we're at that stage, and I don't think we're going to be at that stage anytime soon. There's this whole field of research called artificial general intelligence, where the hope is to build systems that can truly abstract and learn from the past and apply those abstracted learnings to the future or to the present. We're not there yet. I don't see us being there for a considerable amount of time, at least not in my lifetime. And wisdom is going to reside with the people. And that's why I say college doesn't go away because it's about teaching you how to learn. It's about the process of learning, process of abstraction, the process of AI doesn't get rid of the process of empathy and understanding people and trust and things like that. The lessons of history are always about people. They're not about facts and figures and statistics and whatnot. Those are the ways in which we convey the lessons of history, but those are not the lessons of history. And a machine at present is not going to be able to understand the true lessons of the past. And that's where wisdom is.
Love that.
That's completely with people.
Yeah. It's so fun to hear in the context of an AI conversation the importance of humanity and the importance of connection and the importance of really how that's going to be elevated when people can't just do tasks. They have to elevate themselves to actually do more than just the tasks, which is where the
Mhm.
human connection is, which is fantastic. Let's have a little bit of fun here for a second. What is the craziest thing you have ever seen with AI? And maybe it's not something recent. Maybe it's like the first time you saw it do something, or what is like when you saw something, your mind went bang, like, what is going on here? What was that?
So I think there's a couple of things and they're in different contexts. So one of the most astounding new things that I've seen AI do is create full motion, high resolution, full frame video. That is an astounding thing to me. We are now in an age where you can't trust the words you read, the pictures, or the videos you watch. You have no idea whether or not those were human generated or machine generated. And I think that's an astounding place to be now because We were having this conversation about trust before, and how do we trust in an age of AI? And I think this is the most kind of mind-blowing thing. How do we trust in an age where we can no longer trust our senses? I don't know if anyone has followed what Elon Musk and his Neuralink company have been doing. They just finished implanting a Neuralink device into a paralyzed man. And I think they just said he spent all night playing Civilization 6 on his computer, no sleep recently. But that eventually is going to become a two-way street, right? That feedback is going to become two-way. And so we are going to live in a world where we cannot trust our five senses. We already have a hard time with hearing and vision because we can't trust what we see. We can't trust what we hear because we can artificially generate any person's voice. We can have it say whatever we want it to say.
We can't trust what we taste. There are things we eat that we call food that aren't really food.
That's true. That's going to get even better with 3D printed proteins and all those kinds of things that we can do now. There are haptic systems that can simulate particular senses of touch, and they can simulate molecules for olfactory senses and things like that. So we're getting to the point now where we as humans, who have evolved to live in a world governed by our five senses, can no longer trust those five senses. Now, what does it mean? Now, what do we do? How important is it to have that kind of latent understanding of the connections between people, to be able to empathize with people, to be able to trust people? How do we do that in an age where our senses are no longer a tool for understanding the objective reality of nature?
Yeah. Wow. Wow. If I had to answer that for me, and it plays into what you just said, I got a sales piece from somebody at one point, and I opened up and there was a video in the email, and I started watching the video. And the video started with, "Hi, John, I'm excited to talk to you today about the product." And he went on for 5 minutes. And I'm like, this is amazing. And I went back to watch the beginning of it. And the "Hi, John" was the person saying, "Hi, John," lips moving, "Hi, John."
Mhm.
But the other 4 minutes and 58 seconds was like a canned, piece. So the whole
Yep.
thing was meant to send out as a mass email to thousands of people that I thought was personalized for me in that moment. And I was like, wow, how does this person get these things out? Now I know. One of my neighbors just got accepted to a New England prep school, and every school on the acceptance email got a video from the president talking about, "Hey, welcome to school, congratulations," a couple of things, and I'm pretty sure it was AI generated, but the service to the kid didn't know that, and the family didn't necessarily know that at first. And so here's my question, Dr. Luke. If I wanted to start a YouTube channel for entrepreneurs where every show I talk about a concept of entrepreneurship and business, and I have graphs to show and all these other things, but I actually don't
Mhm.
want to record them. I just actually want to feed the AI the content and have the AI be me speaking on YouTube, showing graphs and videos. What is that software? Where do I get that?
So that hasn't been packaged up and offered
Okay.
as a service quite yet, but we're getting really close. We see tools like OpenAI's Sora that are generating video based purely on description. We have seen in a university research setting the use of AI tools to generate very close, nearly exact likenesses of existing people, both from a visual perspective and an audio perspective. So we're getting very close to that point where, in the same way that we can auto generate a blog post, eventually we'll be able to just generate what used to be vlogs, but are now just YouTube videos of people talking. But the next big thing after that, and I will give this away to all your listeners for free, the next big service after YouTube will be the one where I, as a human being, with my microphone and my camera, can converse with someone on the other side that doesn't exist. Maybe right now you have a Calendly, for example, that
Yep.
gives you open schedules. What if there was a service where I was like, I want to talk to John right now? And it popped up a video and I was talking to you, but you weren't there.
That's
That's
really
where we're
good.
headed.
That's really good. Awesome. Dr. Luke, this was awesome. You're awesome in Austin. You're awesome today. If you want to get more information, specifically, if you're looking to try and get an ROI from this thing called artificial intelligence, and they want to call on you and your services and what you guys do as a firm, how do people reach out to you? How do they get to contact you?
So there's a lot of ways you can get a hold of us. The best way is sending an email. You can send an email to me personally. It's Luke at Vizias.com. That's Vizias.com. Or you can send a general message to info@Vizias.com, and we'll be happy to answer it, or go to the website, it's Vizias.com.
Awesome. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Rich. I appreciate it.
Stay tuned as John and Rich unpack today's conversation.
John, I'm going to take us down a philosophical route, knowing that we're going to have to circle back around and ground this into something useful for entrepreneurs and ourselves that we could do something with. But on the philosophical route, mind-blowing when he was talking about how can we trust in an age where we can't trust our five senses? And he started going through them. And it was like, you can't trust your vision because the picture might not actually have been taken. And you can't trust your hearing. That sound may not have been made from an instrument. It may have been made from a computer. We've had that for a while, right? You can't trust your taste. We eat things all the time that aren't actually food by evidence of it doesn't rot, animals don't eat it, and mold doesn't grow on it. So nothing else that would indicate that it's food eats it, but we do. The smell has been there for a long time. Like, we have deodorant that smells like flowers, but it's not actually a flower, nor was it made from a flower. And then we're on the verge of the touch part. He talked about the haptics where, you can feel things where it's not actually touch. Here's the philosophical question I have for you. Does it matter if it's real or not? In other words, have you ever said to yourself, I like the scent of this deodorant, but it's not actually flowers, so I don't like it now? No, that's a pleasant scent. It's a pleasant scent, whether it's actually what it represents or doesn't. Oh, I don't like that music because it's not actually from an instrument. Does it matter that we won't be able to trust our five senses? Won't we be reduced to? It'll just be objectively, do you like it or do you not? But it'll be not grounded in necessarily any truth or reality other than your perception.
The saying perception is reality comes into focus, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it does matter. I think it's dangerous in terms of you thinking you're seeing something or hearing something or seeing a video of something that's not actually true. I think there's going to be this old school thinking. And when old school, 30 years from now, we're going to have this old school thinking compared to the people that are 20 at that time, where they're going to think it's completely natural. How can you eat that stuff? That's not real steak or whatever, right? So I think there's going to be all this change that happens. But I think that's what evolution is. When deodorant first came out, it may not have smelled like roses. Now it smells like roses, but I don't think my deodorant is a rose I'm going to give to my wife for our anniversary. I know what it is. I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about the things we try and make smell or taste a little better with spices, or I'm not worried about those kinds of things. I'm worried about the fakeness of reality. And Dr. Luke ended with, I'm going to be able to schedule a call with John and have a conversation with John. John's not even there. But we're going to trust the AI so much that the AI is going to sound like me, talk like me, have the history of everything I've ever said, and make sure that I say the right things. And I will trust it to represent me in that situation. Now, is that good or bad, Rich? I don't know. I feel like it's bad right now. But if I said to you tomorrow, you could have a morning conversation every morning with Ed Milet to get your day going, would you like that or not?
And that feels real, and you're getting real advice, and you're getting motivated.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm wondering in my opening question was like, does it matter? Does it matter if you're talking to Ed Milet, if what you're getting out of it is what you wanted, whether you were talking to him or his avatar, if you're getting motivated and you're getting wisdom, and does it matter that it's not real?
Listen, we can get really philosophical, right? How many lonely people are there in the world that don't have companionship? Does it matter if their companion isn't actually human in the future? I don't know. It doesn't feel right for me right now. But like at the end of the day, what is right is in the eye of the beholder, and perception will be reality for many people. There are people that are already going in the metaverse and think that's real life. So I think it's gonna be a matter of personality. But what I meant by evolution, there was something I listened to on a podcast. It may have even been Elon Musk or somebody like that who was talking about evolution. And they're like, look, we used to be fish. Look at us now. So who's to say that in the evolution of life, hundreds of years from now, There's not a robot that acts like me, that has a home like this, that has a wife and kids. Who are we to say what evolution means? And the reason why they say that is they say, listen, Rich, we're going to die at some point because we either have a software problem or a hardware problem. They're proving right now that both software and hardware can be solved. So if I get something implanted in me to help my heart beat, am I a robot? What if I had to put something implanted in my brain to help me with memory? Now am I a robot? Like at what
Slippery
where's the
slope.
evolution line
Yeah.
gonna be? If you want to
Yeah.
go philosophical, that's really the question. Because I think at some point, portions of the things in our hardware or software are gonna be AI driven technologies.
Well, here's a place where it goes to not a good place. Do you remember when it was Kelsey who was yelling in Andy Reid's face? And those pictures were all over the place with him, open mouth, screaming, red face at
Yes.
Andy Reid.
Yes.
Something I saw on social media after that, maybe a day after, was a picture of Andy Reid kissing Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
And it said, that's what you get. And I'll tell you what, it looked real. It looked like he was kissing Taylor Swift. And then you think about it and you're like, oh, come on. That's not actually a thing. And I think there was actually a news article written about it that looked like a news article. That's where I'm going to go against and argue against myself that it doesn't matter. That's like when you start judging the world and people negatively or potentially even positively by the things that you see that aren't actually real, I think that gets really problematic.
Hold on, you're
Pictures-
talking about malicious intent.
Yes.
Malicious, if there's malicious intent in anything, whether it's real or unreal, it matters. So
Yeah,
so you have to take malicious intent, put it over here. Anything that falls in the malicious intent is going to
Sure.
matter, whether
Or
it's
just
fake or true or
deception.
real or untrue.
Or just deception, not even malicious, but
Yeah.
deception, which you could say all deception's malicious.
But like the idea of deep fakes and putting someone else's head on a nude body and passing that around, or deep fake sex videos, all those things have been around for decades now. So that's not necessarily novel and new. The fact that you can generate it so quickly off of anybody's computer and post it on Twitter, that's new.
And the
But the
average
malicious
person can
intent-
create it.
Yeah, if malicious intent's involved, it matters. But if I'm trying to make your steak taste a little bit better because I got a little bit of spice to put on it and make you like it better, does it really matter? I don't know. But let me switch gears for us just for a minute, because I think this is a really important piece that really I thought was genius of Dr. Luke to say. AI has the opportunity to give every employee an employee. I really love that.
Yes.
And I would ask everybody listening to this to think about it. You have a new employee. What are the things that you do every day, and keep researching ways that you can offload some of that to your new employee so you can be more efficient in other ways? If you're in sales, if you're in operations, what happens is a lot of people get stuck in the weeds, Rich, where they're working, they're shoveling the dirt, they're shoveling the dirt, they're shoveling the dirt, whatever they're doing, and they never pick their head up and go get educated on how they could save themselves time with these new tools that are coming. And therefore they just keep doing what they've always done. And I think it's really important to really think everybody has a new employee called AI. Go figure out how it can save you some time and energy.
Have you attended any prompt engineering classes or education yourself?
I've watched videos on prompt engineering, especially when ChatGPT first came out, like how to use it, what are ways to do it, but not extensively. I'm not
Sure.
certified in any way, shape, or form.
And I'm just curious. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Just curious as to your experience with it. Have you had anyone in any business that you work with have a full-time job like what Dr. Luke referenced, where either it's a full-time job that somebody's a prompt engineer, or are you aware of any business that has had prompt engineering training for their business?
No, not at this point. I've heard of what he said, that there's prompt engineers now. And I'll give you a good example in this space, Rich. Coding, to be a coder, is going out of style because the AI can code for you. The one area where AI has really made a massive boom is in coding, because it knows all of the coding language.
Yeah.
So you don't need to be a coder anymore to write thousands of lines of code, literally manually coding. You need to be a really good prompt engineer to get the AI to do the code for you. And a good prompt engineer could do thousands of lines of code within seconds to get a product to market. So that's an example of prompt engineering where that's really being used a lot in the coding world specifically versus small business is the way that I look at it. But you know what I thought was fascinating about prompt engineering, and I didn't get a chance to bring it up in the conversation?
Tell me.
Prompt engineering is about asking the right question,
Mhm.
because any single word that's off may not get you the result or reaction you're expecting from AI. How true is that to life when
Mm.
you're interacting with others? And you could say one thing, or you could say another thing. You could say it this way, you could say it that way, you could say it with this tonality or that tonality. But the way you prompt engineer when you're interacting with people dictates their response. And so it's just interesting to me. I was thinking how life imitate art, AI is imitating humans a little bit, but in a way, you have to know how to ask the right questions. And that's just not AI, that's life.
That is interesting. We've had prompt engineering through our whole lives, which is prompt engineering around with people. One of the things that I felt very, I don't know, some of this feels disturbing to me a little bit about where things are going because it's so unfamiliar and you just don't know how it's going to impact things. But one of the things that made me feel very at peace was this is used for first drafts, is his recommendation. And I very intentionally wanted to lock him down. Is that 100% of the time? And at this time, he said yes. So I feel secure in that, at least, that it doesn't feel fake per se, that what we're getting from people in the copy hasn't even been reviewed or approved by a human. At least a human has reviewed it and edited
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
but at least we could speed up first drafts or something in that that I feel like can be useful for any business. That if any business is sitting around thinking, how can I get started in this? The how to get started in it seems elementary, which is anything that has writing, anything that has copy involved. I have the whole list that we went through over the course of the podcast, where it's like statements of work, SOPs, blog posts, agendas, manuals, documentation, onboarding materials. Any of those things, at least get a first draft from AI.
Yeah. Rich, I don't do anything without a first draft from AI. Anything. I really don't do anything. I don't do a press release. I don't do a letter if I have to write a letter for anybody. And like literally some state in the United States where I had to write a letter as an owner of our business to have them release an account or something like that. I literally had AI write the letter. But where I agree and disagree with Dr. Luke is absolutely use AI for first drafts of everything. Absolutely. Don't waste any time. Just go straight there. But then I also use AI to end it. I literally don't produce anything out there without Grammarly AI going through the entire thing grammatically, finding all the errors, all the different things. So I polish it up with AI too. So I started with AI and I polish it up with AI. And if there's any guts that needs to be further developed, I use AI to further develop it. So I would literally take a paragraph. We did this recently in a competency model, actually. We were building a new competency model for training at our company. And the section was weak, and I took the section, I put it in AI, I said, can you really develop this? We can give more instruction to the reader. And bang, developed it, put it back in the document, edited it a little bit more. I'd Grammarly polish it up, good to go. So there's a lot of tools there. But listen, Rich, excited to have Dr. Luke here. And guess what? Dr. Luke was an awesome for the Empowerment Experience. This year, we have the Empowerment Experience in Charleston, South Carolina, September 23rd to the 25th. You can get more information at entrepreneursunited.us. So if you want to join us there, we have speakers like Dr. Luke and many others that really come help entrepreneurs sharpen the saw. And it's great to have these guests come back and share more wisdom with us for sure.